Hello, horrorphiles. You're listening to Dissecting Horror,
examining the anatomy of fear in film, television, and literature. The X-Files, Season 5, Episode 12, Bad Blood. Scully and Mulder each recount their version of events that led Mulder to drive a stake through the heart of a Texas teenager he claims was a vampire, according to the Internet Movie Database. Prior to watching this episode, my main experience with the X-Files universe was the film, X-Files, I Want to Believe. I may have watched an episode or two of this show over the years, but I can't really recall any from memory. For context, I'm also very picky about sci-fi and aliens, having much more selective taste in regards to these than I am with horror as a whole. Of course, due to how big the series was in pop culture, I had a decent framework and expectations for the subject matter, tone, themes, and relationship dynamics of the show. All in all, I was going in with fairly fresh eyes and only knowing the episode involved my favorite creature of the night, vampires.
This 1998 The X-Files episode employs the Rashomon effect, a storytelling method in which an event is given contradictory interpretations by the individuals involved, providing different perspectives of the same incident. The effect is named after Akira Kurosawa's 1950 Japanese film Rashomon, meaning main city gate, in which a murder is described in 4 contradictory ways by 4 witnesses, and so is used to describe the phenomenon of the unreliability of eyewitnesses. The Rashomon effect has been employed in sitcoms mostly, commonly exaggerating each character's interpretations of the same events to comedic extents, each typically painting themselves as more virtuous over their counterparts while telling the same story. It has been used in countless shows from The Odd Couple, Malcolm in the Middle, Frasier, and of course, The Simpsons. This episode of The X-Files retains that same comedic tone in contrast to its usual more dire nature.
A large focus of the episode is how memory and perspective can be unreliable and wildly differing, especially with 2 people who have fundamentally different relationships and responses to the strange and unknown. Scully and Mulder's stories intersect at times, while at times being at different places and having stories only they can tell, powering the narrative through to be more than purely comedic commentary on perception.
Bad Blood was written by Vince Gilligan, writer, director, and producer of many X-Files episodes, and later creator of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, along with several X-Files spin-offs. And Cranston does appear in an episode of The X-Files, by the way, co-written by Vince Gilligan, which probably led to him becoming cast in Breaking Bad by Gilligan years later.
A constant in the X-Files, the dynamic of Mulder and Scully's differences in mindsets is a driving force in Bad Blood and offers equally interesting possibilities in who their blood-draining victim could be, a vampire pop culture enthusiast dabbling in the occult, or a true vampire. Scully's logical, rational mindset and Mulder's open-minded, bold belief offer wonderful contrasts that establish a compelling mystery and intrigue, developing in compelling ways. The highlight of this episode for me was any time Mulder talked about vampire lore and possibilities. I appreciated his acknowledgement of there being many different forms, realities, weaknesses, strengths of vampires in different cultures. At first glance, we are given a cunning, unsuspecting, yet reckless vampire, but one with limited intrigue who comes off as a bit over the top and comical at times. While this isn't all that serious of a vampiric character study, I did appreciate one of the later twists that gives us more of the traditional hypnotic, mysterious, predatory vampire that is a little bit more alluring and menacing.
This episode does not connect with any overarching storylines The X-Files is famous for, with its alien government conspiracies and such. It is what is termed a monster of the week, also called villain of the week, freak of the week, etc., where the antagonist only appears in one episode of a multi-episode work, and so functions as a standalone, self-contained story requiring little or no understanding of the rest of that show's history. Such are more rare these days, with streaming series geared more towards binge-watching and uninterrupted storyline over its season.
Bad Blood also delivers on the macabre settings, largely taking place in a small town in Texas, but more importantly, setting most scenes in the morgue and a quaint yet creepy town cemetery. There is an entrancing, eerie nature to the visuals in these scenes, but is more about how they are simple settings, yet intrinsically linked to death in classic horror stories. Mulder details why the cemetery is the logical place for them to find their vampire, or human vampire-loving occultist. both because a vampire must return to their home soil to slumber, and because it is a nocturnal haven filled with death visited by the living. It is like a siren call. The morgue scenes offer their own creepiness too, with a stark coldness and stillness, with Scully largely being alone, mirrored with the detached yet visual starkness of her bloody dissection of the dead. Her lack of belief in supernatural and her unconcerned, almost bored attitude builds up a sense of dread and the audience believing horror might be lurking just behind.
This episode guest stars Luke Wilson and Patrick Renna, the latter perhaps best known for the kids' baseball classic The Sandlot, where he plays Ham Porter, the chubby catcher. Now, I have a real-life horror story with Patrick Renna of my own, which I will get into momentarily. But The Sandlot is yet another film everyone has seen or grew up with, while I only watched it for the first time maybe 2 months ago. As a baseball fan and former Little Leaguer, I did enjoy it. So here's what happened. Around the year 2000, I used to work in Glendale, California at an establishment called Copy Central. There I operated copy machines of various sorts. One fine day, Patrick Renna, of all people, strolled into the store. It was just the two of us there. He needed some copies of his acting resume. I immediately recognized him, not just as that actor from The Sandlot and this episode of The X-Files, but as someone who belongs to my same church. So while chatting it up with him, I also made the copies he came in to make. He was very warm and communicative and left a satisfied customer. Great. But maybe an hour later, I went to that same copy machine and found to my horror that I had left his original resume on the glass. I was so distracted by our chat that I committed that most unthinkable of rookie mistakes in my former profession. I was and am mortified by this. I don't know if he ever came back for it, but I did put it in Lost and Found. Hopefully, he blames himself.
Oh no, the horror. Overall, Bad Blood is an enjoyable episode that explores vampiric lore, culture, and human nature well. While personally, I would have liked it to be a tad bit darker and more serious in moments with a larger focus on the vampire itself, the offbeat humor and cheesy moments within the mystery seem to be a staple of the show and largely worked, even viewing this episode on its own merits. Within the over-the-top and tongue-in-cheek moments, there was still the dark, morbid subject matter and looming mystery that countered it in an effective balancing of tones. It didn't have me on the edge of my seat, and it won't be added to my favorite vampire depictions, but it was still a fun episode that managed to weave in a lot in its 45-minute runtime.
Who do you think was more hunky here, David Duchovny or Luke Wilson?
Well, Luke Wilson, but I'm a Luke Wilson fan, so yeah, he was a fun surprise to see, and I wasn't really expecting that. And it's kind of like a fun thing of watching slightly older shows, like not even that it's like older, but like I didn't totally come around to the fandom, but when I was like binging Supernatural for 10 seasons, you see in so many small parts, you see actors then blew up and are like, oh, I know this person from that show, and it's kind of fun to go back and see them like earlier in their career. But yeah, I thought he did very well. He was compelling and interesting, and then where things go, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
It was funny too.
Mm-hmm.
The aspect ratio when originally aired was 4:3, which fit the more squarish TVs that existed at the time. This high-definition remaster is cropped at the top and bottom to make it widescreen, with the sides expanded out more where possible. Do you have any feelings one way or another about tampering with original material, Kelsey?
If it's just like updating the technology, mostly okay with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it being in high definition, although whenever they have a visual effects shot that's left in low resolution because they didn't want to redo the effects, or there's a stock shot of an airplane or something and that's not the same resolution, it stands out.
Mm-hmm.
I understand Buffy, they really screwed that one up when they remastered it. The color grading was way, way, way off, and you can see crew members on the sides, and
oh boy,
they just spent so little care on that one that it's caused an uproar in the Buffy community.
Mm-hmm.
But are you into Buffy? I've never seen it myself.
I like Buffy. Like, I love Buffy as a character. She's a strong, great character, but there's a lot of times throughout the series that I'm like, Buffy, you're being so judgy right now. And like, I'm a Spike fan, first and foremost, which shouldn't be a surprise.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, not aware of like Angel and Spike?
No, it means nothing to me. Your words mean nothing.
Like, okay, I thought that was just like a pop culture thing. He is the main, initially villainous vampire that becomes a strong main character throughout the series. I mean, throughout the whole thing, I didn't want her to kill any vampires, and it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there.
I went to high school with a guy who worked on that show for a lot of years, and it was his pride and joy. He did makeup effects or worked in that department, that sort of thing.
The makeup was pretty fantastic.
I think he actually worked on the X-Files too. I think he won a Grammy. Not Grammy. He won a Grammy.
Wow.
He was so good.
The musical episode?
Yeah, he won an Emmy for, or co-won an Emmy for some makeup effects, but I don't remember the episode. But anyway, Small World.
If you enjoyed this deep cut, you'll love the podcast in full.
If you would like to join our Society of Grotesquerie and Loathing, subscribe now and give this podcast a like.
And be sure to comment your wretched thoughts below.
Keep our podcast suffering on by finding it in your cold, black, withered hearts to support us on Patreon.
A link to our PayPal is also below for one-time donations of any amount.
It was nice knowing you.